G'day guys, Tills20 here and welcome back to Springwood. In today's episode I'm going to continue fleshing out this wealthy residential area. I'm really in the right mind frame at the moment to kind of work on this area, so I probably will continue working on this suburban region for the next few episodes. I do kind of work on a bit of the commercial area we did a couple of episodes ago when I put in this really cool looking Sunken train station, and then I work on another train station kind of following this train line towards the outer skirts of the city, and it works out really well. I'm really happy with it. So if you're going to skip through any of the time lapse, jump back in towards the end because it's a really cool thing. Jumping into the actual time lapse now, and I'm really planning out this area a little bit more. I've spoken about how when I do my planning and setting out all the roads and where I want everything to sit, I do like these kind of unconventional, not quite as straight, perpendicular, parallel lines, like the grid style. I'm referring to the grid. I kind of like it when it's not so straight and not so even. I find it a bit more realistic, and just looking at these pictures of LA, like it's quite, the grid isn't perfect, and I kind of like that, so I'm really going for that sort of look. And then also put down these grey back alleys that are really common in Los Angeles. It seems to be like pretty much whether it's high-rise apartments or low residential areas or even like rich and the poor, like it seems to be like this underlying theme that's in LA to have these style of roads. So that's something that I really am trying to, feature in every sort of suburb that I create. So on the topic of roads and city grids, somebody actually asked the question last week in the last episode, what do Australian cities actually look like, and if I'd ever consider building an Australian city or style of city in City Skylines. Well, my first city I ever built, the one that I kind of came into City Skylines building, was actually was very much inspired by an Australian city. But then I kind of got a little bit bored from it because I felt like I'd already, I live in Australia, and I don't particularly find the cities that interesting, I guess, comparative to the cities in the US or in other countries. And it kind of made me think about the uniqueness of the city that I live in. So I live in Sydney, and in terms of the style of Sydney buildings or even Australian buildings, I guess it's very much English, but with a splash of the US and whatever the rest of the world is doing. I think we're doing our own thing, except it's quite an Australian style. But I think that because it's such a multicultural city and country, we kind of get a lot from a lot of different countries and mush it all together, and that's what we are. That's pretty much Australia. Just a bunch of different countries put together, this is what we are. And the actual city itself of Sydney is kind of situated in this really beautiful, lush environment. We've got this huge harbour that kind of comes in, and we've got these different inlets, and I guess back in the day the city planners would have had a real field day planning this actual city around it. And I guess this city is in fact not totally planned. So apparently the roads in the city are actually old herding trails from goats way back in the day, and over time they've just become main roads. So all of these roads are just zigzagging all over the place. There's no such thing as a straight road in Sydney. It's just everywhere. And it's also a really hilly city. So I know that a lot of US cities are actually intentionally built on quite flat plains, whereas Sydney is just built on it's the worst possible place to build a city, pretty much. But it's beautiful. We're surrounded by so many trees and so much water, and I live in the city. I'm pretty close to the actual main drag of the city, and we still get beautiful Australian birds coming in, and like bugs and insects and spiders, and you pretty much can't go anywhere in Australia without being exposed to like just a huge amount of different wildlife. It's ridiculous. And the city is no exception, you know, you might have a little less, but you still get quite a lot of wildlife in the city, which is crazy. Like, I know in other countries I've been to, you don't get as much, except for India, where there's like monkeys in the cities, which is crazy. But I mean, like, you're pretty much exposed to the wildlife in the city, which is really cool. Like, it's a really, really cool thing. But anyway, enough about Sydney. Let's get back to the time lapse, where I've actually stopped kind of working at this grid and started working on this underground sunken train station. And it was really hard to work with. It's quite a narrow space and didn't really have much room. So I had to kind of be really careful with how I structured it and how I kind of placed buildings. Now I've moved that building over there, the big orange and blue one, just to hide the road that comes down into the sunken train station. But I needed road access, so I had to kind of connect it somewhere. So I felt that was the best spot, and I cover up that entrance with just like different props. There's me trying to figure out a prop there. So as you can see, I am actually trying to squeeze in some different buildings to cover up some spaces, and you know, trees work really well like that because they do expand out, and you know, with the leaves, and you can kind of create good illusions using different types of trees. And I really wanted this train station to be here because I did want like this commercial area is quite, like I would imagine it'd be a very touristy area. So I felt like there needed to be more than just a tram stop here. But then this train station is quite far away from the main shopping drag of the city. So it's not central, but it is kind of, you know, it does serve that shopping district pretty well. And I really enjoy working with these sort of areas, like these, you know, playing with decals and making train stations look different and interesting in like kind of like unique ways. And yeah, like I had a lot of fun actually working on this. I did change the road, so you can see I'm hiding it here with these decals, but I changed the road so that it wasn't used by just, you know, the common Joe. It had have to be, the only cars that would actually get down there were service cars, like, you know, police and fire brigade, and every now and again you'll see like a truck go down there. But generally it's pretty car free, and people just kind of, which is really cool, like walk down that overpass that I just put there. And I mean, like putting things like overpasses and trees and spotting it with different decals and props kind of really hides all the imperfections of this train station, I guess. Because when I first plopped it down, I was thinking, nah, it's not going to work. But when you kind of start moving props and hiding errors and things like that, I think it works out pretty good, and especially when you start getting a bit more of a flow of people coming through. While I'm just chipping away at this train station, I will say a huge thanks to everybody who's been following the series so far. We're up to episode 9 now, and the city's really starting to come along, and it's been really great seeing the same people commenting all the time. Like I recognize a lot of names, and it's really cool seeing people actually following the journey every episode. It's really cool. If you're brand new to this series, this is the city of Springwood. And as you can probably imagine, as you can probably tell by looking at the pictures, it's a city inspired by LA and New York, but definitely not a recreation of the cities. I'm basically getting inspiration from the cities and then totally butchering it with my own style. That's my opinion. And yeah, the city is set in 1987, so I'm trying to keep to that theme. And I've also started the series off with very much a already established city, but really badly modelled, if you can kind of imagine. So a lot of it needs to be redone. I guess from about episode 1 to now, all the work that I've put into it is like it's all been like stuff that I'm going to keep in the city, but all the stuff I've done before that is stuff I'm going to delete and will at least work over. And that includes the actual skyline. The skyline in the city's average, and every now and again a building will be deleted or like I'll unsubscribe from it, and so the skyline's actually starting to disappear, and the downtown's looking really bad at the moment. Like it's in really bad shape, which like I think is actually really cool, because it means then I can go back and actually start modeling it out. Because when I first plopped it all down, I kind of knew that I would fix it up eventually, and actually record the footage and have people put their 2 cents in it and stuff. And I'm kind of thinking about when I do make the downtown and the skyline of the city, I'm thinking about maybe doing that in maybe a live stream when I kind of figure out how to do that. I think that'd be a really interesting time to do it. And I'm kind of starting to get to the point where I do want to do a live stream and actually work on that skyline for reals and get everyone's opinion. So I am kind of going through the workshop and downloading lots of assets that I think are going to contribute to the downtown area. And in my mind, I am getting a really good idea of what I want it to look like. So if you ever see the skyline in any of this cinematics, just think about that it's going to change. And the actual downtown is in really bad shape at the moment. Like lots of gaps, lots of awful buildings. Like I'm really keen to actually just fix it up. So if you're keen for a live stream, if you're keen to sit through me working on something like that, or if you just want to see me do the downtown or the skyline anytime soon, let me know and I'll consider doing it sooner than later if that's something that people want to see. Now, going back to the time lapse, I'm working on the underpass area for the train station, and the train line, there's like only 2 lanes in the train line. So like I felt like I needed to have like a bit of a detour. Detour is not the right word. What's the right word for it? We needed another access point for the trains to kind of go past if they're not going to stop at this train station. And it kind of worked out really well, Like I said before, I really didn't have enough space to play with. Train stations are definitely in a wider area. They usually have more space to actually work with. But like this, I was just really cramped. So I found it kind of hard to make the detour for the train line, but I think it worked out in the end. Like I really started modeling this underground area, this lower area of the city of the train line, and man, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I really love different layers in the city, in the landscape, and I think it adds a lot to the city. I think it adds quite a lot of different dimensions. So really happy with how it kind of panned out and worked out. And as you can see, there are areas where you kind of can't really work with, and they don't model so well, but you start putting down different planters just to kind of hide a bit of the misshape of the landscape, and it hides a lot of the imperfections, I guess. So always plopping down these planters, can't get enough of them. I think they hide a lot of the crap that I leave behind when I start terraforming, and so it's really great. And same with trees, they just cover it up. They cover up everything, which is awesome. I guess the train lines are usually cemented there, hundreds of years prior to the city actually becoming a proper city. And then the city kind of builds around it. Whereas it's hard in city skylines because you generally build the city and then you kind of plop down a train line. So it's kind of hard to map it out. I always struggle with train lines because I want them so much, but it's also really hard to figure out where they're going to sit, because I usually place down a lot of buildings and go, damn it, I really want a train line there, and kind of have to rip it all up. So I'm kind of placing down this train line as I go, and it's also kind of hard because kind of have a bit of an idea of where I want the train line to go, but then also wanted to take a very realistic direction in the city. Like I wanted to follow the grid and service particular parts, but as I kind of start expanding it, I'm realizing that it doesn't expand a lot of parts because I just have it like, I guess I freestyle every now and again, and it just kind of takes different shapes that I wasn't really expecting. So it can be kind of hard to kind of map that out. Around here, this is kind of where the suburbs start in the city, and like I do have a couple of awkward shapes, like in terms of the grid. So I do use these awkward shapes to plop down, not like maybe like sort of like parks and maybe some different shops and just things that don't follow, that aren't, you know, particularly square or rectangular or something like that. Things that you can manipulate quite well, and I feel like parks have constantly been placed in these sort of areas where different grids sort of meet, and then they form kind of hard shapes to work with, hard shapes to plop down suburbs, and then they usually reserve them, I guess, for parks and other sort of buildings. On the right hand side, you can see I've plopped down, I guess, a vanilla zoo in the game, but I mean, it's far too small for a city zoo. So I've plopped it down, but I'm calling it like a petting zoo, you know, like it's or like some sort of wildlife sanctuary. It's not, I would not classify that as the city zoo. It's far too small. But that is something that I think would be really cool in the city. Like, I'd actually really love to actually put that down somewhere. But I don't know. I have to think about where I need these sort of things. And I guess now that I'm kind of shaping the inner west, well, not the inner west, that's where I live in the city, but now that I'm starting to shape the outer skirts of the actual downtown regions of the city, I really need to start considering what a city would have in those regions, because I think a city zoo would live in a region like that. I don't think it'd be way out in the suburbs somewhere or out in the sticks. I think it's going to be close to the city. It's the same with town halls and courtrooms, and there's so many things that I need to start considering that, you know, like when I placed down the aquarium in the last episode, I felt like the aquarium best suited this environment, but I know I'm also missing a lot of other things that are best suited for this environment. So that's just something that I really need to start considering. So in the comments below, definitely let me know if there's anything that you think that I need to put in this wealthy residential area before I move on to it, because it'll be a shame to kind of finish it and go, damn it, like, you know, this belongs there, you know, like a theatre or like a performing arts high school or something like that. So definitely let me know. And I guess on that topic, ages and ages and ages ago, I subscribed to a whole bunch of wealthy residential complexes, so units and stuff, and different sort of houses. And because I subscribed to them so long ago, I've kind of forgot about them. And so when I was kind of like forming this place, and I was scrolling through all my Rico buildings, I realized that I had these, and I was like, God, like I actually got to put these down before I actually finish this area, because like they totally belong there. So this is me kind of panicking and realizing that I have these buildings, and I quickly start chucking them down, because dude, I would really love a lot of complexes of like apartment buildings. So, and I'm using this awkward shape of a grid and kind of putting this park/apartment complex there, which I think works out really cool, and I think it works out really nice. And this is my first one I've done, and I was really happy with how it turned out, and especially using some of these different sort of decals to just to kind of play with it and, you know, mix it up and make it look interesting. When I build my parks, I use this ground texture, and I will use it eventually, and I think it adds a lot to the ground texture. So you'll see me, I'll use it very shortly. You can see these, here we go, I'm starting now. There he is. So it's the fertile ground texture, and I use that to kind of place down my parks, and it just kind of brings a little bit of a shade of more vibrant green, which I would consider being more like of a looked after, manicured grassland and all grass. And so I always use that, always plop that down, no matter what sort of what I would consider to be like a park area. And I feel like it always captures your attention because it is slightly a different color green, and when I build a park and I don't use that, I definitely notice it. So that's just something that I always do. And because I don't always like using this decal here that I'm using right now. Like, I think it's a really great decal, but at the same time it's quite restrictive, and I don't know, I feel like it's not always appropriate in that right area. So I'm really happy with how this kind of area turned out. I think that kind of worked out really nicely. So just around here, again, plopping down these, starting to take shape of another area of the wealthy residential buildings of the city, the suburbs. I don't know why I keep on calling it wealthy residential areas. It's just a habit. And what I'm doing is I'm encouraging buildings to build in some areas, and then, houses to build in some areas, and then I'm also copying and pasting various buildings that I definitely want to be in places. So when you look at Google Maps and you're looking at the way that houses are kind of set down in suburbs, they're all kind of generally facing in the same direction. And that's something that I found that's really important to plop down in this city, at least, to kind of make sure that they do follow the same sort of direction. Otherwise, if they don't, it's really obvious that it's not that realistic. So that's me kind of encouraging them to do that. And there's also some areas that they're not going to actually build. So you can see that grid down there. They're not going to build there, but if I kind of copy and paste them, I can encourage them to actually do that. And I'm not like 100% satisfied with how these areas kind of work out. Like, I think they look pretty cool, but I also think at the same time I can do better. But it's kind of tricky because there's going to be a lot of suburbs in this city, and to kind of sit down and really work at it how I want it to look, I think that it's just going to take forever. And this city does have a time frame. Like, I do want it to be done at a particular time, and I feel as though this city has I've got a lot to do in it, and I'm really excited to see it really expand. And I think that more than 30 episodes is definitely something that is definitely doable, as long as nothing bad happens to the save games or doesn't suddenly disappear or something like that, or break the game. But I am 100% committed to finishing this city and all the outer regions, and I feel like because it is such a huge project and there are so many different elements, that it's not going to get, I don't think it's going to get boring, or I'm not going to get over it, because I feel if I start getting over the city part of it, I can always go off into the mountains and work in that area, or I can work on some neighborhoods, or I can work on a dock. It's a huge space, and there's a lot that I want to cover. And I want it to be a really functional city that I think that there's a lot for me to work on still. So it's kind of hard to, because I know Arrowhead Junction's finishing, and it's totally, like the city's finished. It's like finished project. But yeah, it's so hard to sort of say goodbye to a city and a series when you've been watching it for so long. It's, yeah. But anyway, this is the train station that I'm really, really, really pleased with. It turned out really cool, and the train station itself is crap, but the actual train line is something that I'm really proud of, and it's a sort of style of train line that I want featured throughout this city. So it's quite an iconic sort of train line. It's very similar to the one in Los Angeles. I think it's like a really interesting train line and snakes through the city every which way, and it's almost takes form of a tram line at some points, and this will be a reoccurring theme of just kind of shooting through suburbs or behind building blocks, and so really happy to actually even set this up in the first place, like this sort of style, because it's always been in the back of my mind, but this is the first time I've really kind of attempted to build this sort of style of train line, and I think it works out really well. So this is, I reconnect that diverted train line back up to the main network. It kind of creeps around here somewhere. And I really hope that eventually, like, you will end up seeing real slow moving cargo trains just creeping along that single track line. I think that'll look really great, and that's totally in the intention for it. The tunnels in the game, I think, are actually really cool, and now that we have the move it tool, you can actually position it so that it's sitting just above ground and it kind of just disappears underneath the tunnel, and it works really well. But I mean, you have to use move it to actually achieve that look. But I think I'm going to leave you guys with the rest of the time lapse. There's not much left. No live play in this episode, but I will have some cinematics at the end where I kind of go through the general build and some of the things that I got up to and whereabouts I built, and some ideas for the next couple of episodes. But anyway, I'll leave you guys. Enjoy the time lapse. Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're enjoying the helicopter ride. It's something that I downloaded from the workshop a little while ago. It's so awesome. It's basically a vanilla police car, and but then the helicopter's a prop that sits on top, and the propellers are stationary, but they kind of look like they're moving. That is done in a certain way that they look like they're moving, and pretty much the police car drives around and the helicopter follows it. And it's such an ingenious asset, and so definitely go check it out. Just type in police helicopter and you'll find it in the workshop. In terms of the actual build, really pleased with the general layout of this area. The suburbs I think look really cool. I do want to kind of fix them up a bit more. I reckon they're sitting at about 80% completion. I've put down this kind of like fresh market, kind of think it fits the area, and a couple of other sort of the unit complex buildings that I was placing down before, just kind of spread them out a little bit more. And I've also kind of just started playing around with using the fence prop in the suburbs. Like I think it adds so much more to the actual area, to the suburbs, but I mean, like, it takes ages to actually place down, and I don't know how worth it is actually doing it for all of it. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks heaps for watching. I really appreciate it. I'd really appreciate a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you've really enjoyed it. I'll be posting a 2,200 special in a couple of days to celebrate 2,200 subscribers, which is huge for me. Like, I'm chuffed about it, so thanks heaps. And in the meantime, have a great week. I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.